Hello to you. Thank you for tuning in to this OWHC Chats interview. For this interview, we are so excited to welcome Emily Price from Conscious Capitalism as we talk about the overlap between workplace health and conscious capitalism. Because it's through integrating these different areas of a business, these different mindsets of a business, that we can really achieve sustainable change. It was a ton of fun to speak with Emily as she herself has experience directly in the workplace health world. In this episode, the topics covered include Emily detailing the 4 tenets of conscious capitalism, as well as mentioning to all of us how we can take action on conscious capitalism, whether that be through getting involved with the local chapters, registering for events, or leveraging the various conscious capitalism resources. For a detailed bio, you can see that in our description, which highlights Emily's journey and interests. That said, here's our OWHC Chats interview with Emily Price. Hey, Emily, thanks for taking the time to speak on this OWHC Ontario Workplace Health Coalition podcast interview.
Yes, Nathan, thanks so much for having me. It's a delight to be here today.
Awesome. So reaching out to you had a lot of thought go into it because you represent and are associated with conscious capitalism. But also before that, you worked and were involved with the workplace wellness world. So we'll cover a number of things in our conversation, everything from conscious capitalism specifically, and how it ties to the same or similar principles as workplace wellness or corporate wellness. But before we do that, you yourself as an individual, can you give us your background or involvement with corporate wellness in the first place and what the last number of years looked like for you?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So I grew up in a family of health providers, and early on definitely saw that there was there's a fulfilling career when you are serving people and helping them improve their health and well-being. So I set out to be a provider myself in the early years of my college days, and over the course of that journey, actually uncovered prevention and discovered that I was really passionate about prevention, particularly at a time when the United States was really grappling with these issues around obesity and conversations around how do we inspire our next generation to pursue health. And so I kind of stumbled upon this career path with corporate wellness and really identified that I wanted my imprint, my impact in the world to be on the front end of a wave that could potentially change the trajectory of our future and the future of our world. And I really was motivated by that. So had the opportunity to explore this kind of corporate wellness world, which I knew absolutely nothing about, through a fantastic internship program, and was able to kind of journey through an undergraduate and master's degree, all centered around health promotion and corporate wellness, with the intention of pursuing a path in corporate wellness with a company that I had kind of had the privilege of getting to know early on in my career. So I started down that path and was really inspired by the people I was working alongside, the conversations we were having, and just the overlap really between workplace wellness and the existence of business and families and culture and the intersect of it all, because there's just so much overlap there. It's so rich. It's such an interesting sandbox to kind of play in. So I found myself kind of exploring this corporate wellness world and understanding that a lot of business leaders who we were partnering with were really looking at this from a cost savings perspective, which is important and it is a strong factor. But I ultimately discovered that people who see business as a force for good in the world and actually see their employees as key stakeholders of their organization fundamentally treat workplace wellness differently. So, after several years in that workplace wellness space, I was really motivated to kind of look beyond the curtain and see what's driving this. What's driving this for many business leaders? Why are they choosing to invest in their people? Is there a way to kind of impact corporate wellness from a different angle, maybe from a business philosophy perspective? And that's how I found Conscious Capitalism. And it was really a kind of a turning point in my career in a way, because it allowed me to take things a step deeper, I would say, and look at businesses that just have really a different belief system around why workplace wellness should exist.
Okay, so I'm trying to picture Emily a few years ago,
Mhm.
and now correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like you're working in the corporate wellness space, but you really asked yourself kind of the why
Mhm.
should someone invest in this? Why is this important for business? And then through doing that, or maybe even jumping outside your comfort zone and doing that, asking why, and continuing to learn, you realize that there's a lot more to this, and kind of how you mentioned, this is
Mhm.
how companies treat and invest in their people, and then that's
Mhm.
what led you to the conscious capitalism mindset. Would you say that's fair? Like you kept on asking why,
Yeah,
and really seeing like what is this? There's more to it.
exactly. Yes, I think there was a lot at the time. There was a lot of investment in wellness, workplace wellness solutions, and there's definitely been a long history, as we've talked about before, of pedometers and broccoli promotion in the workplace wellness culture, and just the belief that if we can kind of push people to become healthier, good things will result for our business. And parts of that are true, but when you continue to ask why and look at it from various angles, you also kind of are forced to confront the fact that maybe not everyone is doing this for the right reasons. And that was a hard thing to face. That was a really difficult realization for me as a young professional who, really had strong beliefs about humanity and people in the workplace, and people who are giving away their life to a company or to an organization. Certainly they need to be performing at their best for their own personal well-being and for the business to thrive and succeed. But when I continued to, yes, get to the root of it, I really kind of wanted to be a part of something that was bigger, that was different, that was this growing trend of thought leaders who were fundamentally approaching workplace wellness from a different angle, a different perspective. And I think that's a lot of what conscious capitalism is about. It's about making conscious decisions in business to elevate humanity. And that would include all of your major stakeholders, not just your employees, but your clients and your suppliers and your community and the people that are a part of the business with you. So that really intrigued me. And like I said, I grew up had the privilege of having some early experiences with professionals in healthcare, but I didn't have a lot of business exposure. So I think I was also intrigued by this notion of business and what does this look like and how are people functioning and operating in the business sectors, industries across the global landscape, and what can we do to continue to improve these processes and inspire people to achieve and reach for more than just profit when it comes to business.
And it's refreshing to hear because even Harvard, their culture of health framework is exactly what you just said. It's not just
Hmm.
employee health, but it's also environmental health, community health, consumer
Yeah.
health. So again, not just that employee health pillar, but more than that.
Yeah.
To ask one more question, just about workplace wellness or corporate wellness, is someone listening to this who's new to that world and would love to learn your insight on maybe tips or things that you've done in the past that worked really well, or stories that you've heard that really resonated. Uh,
Hmm.
what could you maybe say to that individual to help make workplace wellness that much more impactful?
Mm. Yeah, I've really loved getting to build inroads with people who are part of organizations that do culture-based work, that do workplace wellness work. There are so many places to get plugged in locally too in your community. Many times your local chamber or your local business communities will have initiatives around workplace wellness now, which is fantastic. So getting connected, especially to the business leaders that you know and work alongside, is a great way to hear success stories or even process and work through the challenges that are associated with this work. I particularly, would say businesses and entities like Wellcoa, the workplace wellness kind of guru. Wellcoa is a great resource to check out. ConsciousCapitalism.org. We focus on kind of elevating the stories of business leaders changing the practice and perception of capitalism for good. So that's another place to go to gather some inspiration and harness insights. And of course, I hope there will be more to come in the future as this continues to grow and expand.
Fantastic. Now, shifting to conscious capitalism in particular,
Mhm.
before maybe even you wanted to share anything you haven't yet about conscious capitalism, I'll just read uh, this sentence here that's actually from the conscious capitalist credo.
Yes, the Pluto, yes.
And I just it's just such it's such nice words, and I'll say it word for word here. It's conscious capitalism is a way of thinking about capitalism and business that better reflects where we are in the human journey, in the state of the world today, and the innate potential of business to make a positive impact in the world.
Mm.
So I'd love to know, Emily, from your perspective, when you even first read that, or like what do you think of, like what do you feel when you hear those words?
Yeah, if you've not gotten the chance to check this out, what Nathan's referring to is the Conscious Capitalism Credo, which you can find on our website at consciouscapitalism.org/credo. And what's so fascinating about this is that it really is able to resonate, I think, with everyone, with every single person. There is so much here. I think the biggest word that stands out to me is this word thrive or thriving, which has just been a part of it. I feel like it's this word that's followed me around for so long now, but it's essentially looking at business and society and humanity and all of those sectors that cross over, and looking at it and saying, how can we together, how can we thrive, and particularly what is the role of business when it comes to creating wealth for all people. And there's this term wealth in the credo. It goes on to describe wealth and what that looks like. It says, um, in reference to conscious businesses, it says that they endeavor to create financial, intellectual, social, cultural, emotional, spiritual, physical, and ecological wealth for all their stakeholders. Interestingly, for all their stakeholders. I love the last line as well. So I'm gonna read that. We're on a roll. I'm gonna go ahead and read that.
Please,
It says,
yes.
Conscious businesses will help evolve our world so that billions of people can flourish, leading lives infused with passion, purpose, love, creativity, a world of freedom, harmony, prosperity, and compassion. Perfect. If that doesn't sum up workplace wellness and the real motivation behind why we should be helping people thrive, both physically and beyond, I don't know what does. This is such an obvious overlap for me as someone who really was able to dig deep into the workplace wellness field and look at this philosophy of business and say, this is one and the same. This is something that every business should be thinking about, should be pursuing, should be, discussing with their stakeholders. So I love that you asked that question.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's almost like if if the trends, or hopefully people know this, that if the trends and who's the newest technology provider 1 year, it's going to change year to year, and based on even that credo said where we
Mm-hmm.
are in the human journey. So trends change, all that will change, but it'd be nice for everyone to know that the mindset, which is what overlaps with conscious capitalism, doesn't change, and that's what is consistent, and that's what can be like a non-negotiable. So yeah, really, just yeah, I think that's it's such a the overlap of mindset is hopefully what individuals hearing this right now is that's what's the light bulbs are going off for them right now.
Yes, that is so true. And let me just take it a step deeper too, and maybe provide an example here. Um, there are four principles or pillars associated with this philosophy, conscious capitalism. So I'm going to quickly go through those because I think it's helpful to just lay the groundwork here. And I want to explain how some of these pieces are really driving workplace wellness. And this is based on research, right? So one of the first tenets of conscious capitalism is higher purpose, which is essentially a stating that a business that knows its why has a purpose beyond just a profit. So capitalism, in by its nature, is we are thinking about things in terms of profitability. That's an obvious factor, but being able to have this true north and a definite purpose that says we're here to help solve a big problem as well. And it's not just companies focused on social responsibility or nonprofit entities. These are, we're talking about businesses that can have a higher purpose and a profit. And that's one of the main, that's one of the main pillars of conscious capitalism. And the second pillar is called stakeholder orientation. And before the wellness world, really in the wellness world, I'd never really heard this term. I didn't know exactly what it meant. So I've enjoyed diving into this a little bit deeper. But essentially, what we're saying is that we have to recognize there's an interdependent nature of life and the human foundations of business, like our ecosystems, our customers, our suppliers, the investors that support us in business, our communities, our vendors. And it's looking at business and saying all of these stakeholders matter. How can I help elevate them as I'm interacting with them in my business decisions? I'm taking into account how this decision will impact my stakeholders, which is huge, right? And another lens that we can look at wellness, the workplace wellness world, and say, oh, okay, this applies to the wellness world as well. In order to have real buy-in and change, we need to have these stakeholders invested in this mission to improve health and well-being for all people. There's two more, and I'll just quickly go through those. Conscious leadership. This is just so clearly connected to wellness. An example I have here is the Gallup research from a couple of years ago that stated 70% of employee engagement levels are associated with the relationship someone has to their direct manager. So if you want to think about impacting workplace culture and wellness, you have to ask yourself this question: how are managers being gatekeepers or amplifiers to this wellness mission that we have? Because guarantee you every single manager, right, is playing a role in this equation. And you can have the best wellness program and the best tools and resources, and you can have managers that are not fostering and facilitating that growth. And it can be the game-changing factor in a workplace wellness strategy. So this one was one that just so obviously stuck out to me when I made that transition. And of course, the fourth one is conscious culture. And it's definitely that underlying fabric, that underlying piece that is the driving force in a business environment, and it really impacts every single person of an organization, and even out into their community, the stakeholders. The culture has a direct impact, and it's so relevant when you think about workplace wellness, right? That culture building strategy is a big component of workplace wellness, especially nowadays. That's become more clear. So if you're curious about the philosophy, there's a lot more here, and we have regular events. In fact, we have almost weekly webinars right now, virtual webinars that we're offering for free, that you can kind of join us and to learn more about this philosophy. But I think we've reached this kind of critical tipping point where I think there's more and more reason for workplace wellness professionals to say, if we want to move the needle forward in our organization, we have to be asking ourselves these questions about our business structure and the conversations that we need to have about purpose, stakeholders, culture and leadership have a direct impact on the success of our workplace wellness strategy.
And for two of those tenets, the leadership and culture one, and actually, Emily, you said a phrase here, and I wrote it down as soon as you said it. So, but maybe I wrote it down wrong. You can let me know. You said something on the lines of kind of managers could be, what is it, supporters or gatekeepers of information?
Yes, gatekeepers or amplifiers, or champions.
Amplifiers.
Yep, they can be the determining factor so much of the time. And that's research, right? That's research that we've been able to look back and say, we're assessing our team members to see how engaged they are, what is the degree of well-being that they're experiencing. And Gallup has a great book about that too, about the kind of the 5 dimensions of well-being. And it's not all physical, right? Contrary to popular belief, it's not just about physical health. In fact, physical health is 4th out of 5 kind of determinants of health and happiness a person might want to achieve or have. So yes, another great resource to go with things on impact of employee well-being and engagement and the relationship that is to we have to managers.
And maybe this is kind of a rhetorical question, but I love just to hear your take on it. Is that what you're saying is wellness, or this idea of thinking for an organization maybe shouldn't necessarily be just for someone who's the wellness coordinator, but rather this should be tied into the conversations, because most likely organizations are doing something with like corporate social responsibility, learning and development. So incorporating these different departments, if you will, all to the same conversation versus different silos.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And there's been some wonderful conferences and events I've been able to be a part of with the corporate wellness community. And I would say one of the more progressive approaches that's hopefully going to become more mainstream, and even is now, is really bringing in wellness experts within a business. If you have a wellness coordinator, really kind of combining their work with human resources, which is a tough term for me. I love to think about human potential or human performance, or something that's just a little bit more humanistic than HR traditionally has a reputation of being like. But the point here is that tying some of these organizational development metrics, the work that's being done to train and onboard and equip team members with skills and resources and tools, is essentially intertwined, or should be intertwined, with the work being done at the corporate wellness level. So, for example, one of my good friends, Cassie, who works with Columbia Sportswear, is really doing such an amazing job, but because of her her work with the organizational development teams, they've been able to become even more effective at what they're doing, winning awards and taking things to the next level. And I think that when you look at a wellness strategy, you really need to be asking yourself who's in this conversation and how can we bring in more really executives, business leaders, CEOs, managers. They need to be on board and engaging in these conversations just as much as the wellness coordinators and the wellness champions, the culture builders, the culture ambassadors within the organization. So those are just some practical ideas that I've gained over the years talking to other experts and thinking through what the best strategies would be. And I think that those are just some things that come to mind around this topic.
Amazing. And I'll ask one more kind of similar, maybe kind of a rhetorical question, but just one more point about this is that it sounds like as well, whether it's wellness, whether it's conscious capitalism, it's just as much about the actual content itself or the actual message itself,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just as much how that message is like communicated or making employees aware, or like you said with the culture with
Mm-hmm.
managers. Would you say that's yeah? It just sounds like it's like how does
Yeah.
this messaging flow to an organization so that as many people are aware of it as possible?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're exactly right. It's something that has to be embedded within the organization, within their DNA. And it isn't just a one time or a once a quarter message from senior leadership teams stating, hey, this is important. You should do this work. The best and most thriving businesses that I've been able to observe now have been those that integrate all the components of their business strategy with their stakeholders and their community. And it looks like a network, really a web of people pursuing a purpose bigger than themselves together, all together. Another way that this has been described through Rosie Ward and John Robinson's work with Salveo Partners, which, by the way, is a fantastic resource if you are a wellness professional or someone who's looking to get more insight into bridging that gap between wellness and organizational development. Salveo Partners has some great tools and resources for you. But I love the way they look at this picture. It's being able to build an organization where each person, if you can imagine a stream, is flowing through this water in their own kayak with a spirit of independence and intrapreneurship really has the opportunity to kind of use their strengths and succeed in their roles, take initiative, but they're all flowing together in the same direction, right? And the culture and the infrastructure and the policies and the procedures support the individuals. And so they're able to flow downstream. And you can imagine that some companies might have this reversed. People are trying to flow upstream against the current to kind of perform at their peak or to make it, and it just doesn't work well, right? It doesn't work well. But if you can just picture, I've envisioned the culture itself is that current. It's kind of hard to touch or grasp, but it moves people along in a certain direction. And that climate, and this is another thing from Salveo Partners, climate is the infrastructure, the policies and the procedures, the rocks on the riverbank, the trees, the kind of the structure, the spaces that are holding that current together. So that's another, I think, fascinating and brilliant example of how we want to build and cultivate organizations to succeed. So each person can be successful, and because of their performance, their peak performance and their contribution and their passion, they continue to propel that company forward towards impact, profitability, success, sustainability. That's the vision I have for corporations everywhere. Some point in the future that every company could be operating at that capacity.
Amazing, really amazing. For the final aspect of this conversation, we can't walk away until we get practical in terms of how someone can get involved, how they can learn
Mhm.
more about conscious capitalism. So let's
Yeah,
start with, if someone's, what are some first steps maybe someone can take? They're listening to this right now. How do they learn about conscious capitalism, and then maybe
yeah.
see if there's a local chapter in their area?
Great question. Yes. So our website, consciouscapitalism.org, has everything that you'll need to know. There's several different sections you can visit. Our events tab will tell you what's coming up both at our chapter and community level and at our kind of national, international level with some virtual events in the pipeline for the rest of the year. So those are all going to be free events, and there's always something happening in the community. So definitely take a look at that. Um, we really help serve business leaders and inspire them to be the best they can be and be a shining example of business for good in their city. So we have specific programs for business leaders. We actually have a consultant certification if you're a consultant and you want to kind of invest in this work in a deeper way. And then we also have the ability for people to kind of raise their hand and say, I want to build a movement in my city. I want to be a change agent for this movement and help really bring people along and understanding this philosophy and integrating it into their business. So there's a tab that you can jump into under Get Involved that shares more about that project, that program. In fact, I'm the person that you would want to get in touch with. And if you want to reach out to me directly, feel free. It's just Emily Price at consciouscapitalism.org. And my email and my information can be found on the website. There's an info box as well. So I'm also on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with people on LinkedIn. If you just search for Emily Price, give me a little memo, and I'd love to get in touch with you and share more about this experience and this philosophy and how you can get involved.
What else, Emily? What can you tell us about conscious capitalism? Also has the different books. What can you tell
Yeah.
us about that? Because even the thinking being maybe even someone might be very close to a bookstore that they could, and that's taking an action.
Definitely. Thanks for bringing that up, Nathan. We have a book actually many years ago now, and it's really a beautiful illustration of this work and has great examples. It's an easy read. It's a great business book, a gift to someone if the holiday is coming up or wherever it is for you, something to do this time of year. So take a look at the book Conscious Capitalism. It's a yellow cover. John Mackey and Raj Sisodia are the authors of that book. And actually, interestingly, there's a new book. There's lots of new books coming out. The Healing Organization is one that Raj released earlier this year, which, as you can imagine, would be really, really impactful and exciting read for wellness providers, wellness consultants, people in this space, talking about business as a force for good in terms of healing, being able to heal and provide support. So that's a great read as well. And then there's the newest book that we have out right now is called Conscious Leadership, and that's by John Mackey. And this is a brand new resource. I haven't even been able to get my hands on it yet. So take a look at those resources. We actually have a tab on our website as well that's just links to books. If you look under our philosophy, you'll see a couple of different tabs that you can go to research and find maybe a book that's more specific to stakeholder orientation or leadership or something else you're interested in. And if you have kids, check out Laura Hall's book, Conscious Capitalism for Kids. It's a great read. And as you think about, I think we all have a desire to imagine a better world for the children of the next generation. So get an early start, take a hold of this book, take a look. There's some great podcasts out there too. We can point you to if you have any questions. Just let me know.
And to provide any kind of more information, because what's going on in my mind right now is if someone was listening earlier in which the tenants really resonated with them, and they're thinking,
Mhm.
oh, like I would like to incorporate the tenants into something that I do, or maybe a training that they already do. Is there anywhere in particular that they can kind of zone in on those four tenants?
Yes. So before tenants, I think that the original Conscious Capitalism book really would be the great place to start because it's going to walk you through those tenants. And on our website, we do have examples. We have some really awesome business stories of leaders that have done this and have applied these principles in their organization. And there's some great resources on our website too, with just amazing, inspiring stories. We have stakeholder maps, a picture of who are my stakeholders, if you want to look at that, underneath our philosophy section. So take a look at those pieces. And then I would say if you can connect to a local movement in your city or consider starting one. And there's a lot more resources that we have built out for our chapter leaders who are sharing this piece and amplifying kind of the mission and vision of conscious capitalism to elevate humanity through business.
And I'll just emphasize that what you just mentioned, Emily, about the stakeholder maps in the on the website are it's amazing seeing other organizations that are very common organizations that I think everyone might shop at monthly or even sometimes weekly to see their stakeholder maps. And
Mm-hmm.
those examples are provided like right on the website, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yes,
Cool.
absolutely.
Uh, okay, so Emily, that said, let's wrap up. And before we do, wanted to ask you if there's anything else you would like to mention to the listeners, um, and then if you don't mind, anything that really has to do with how can we take action and really help move the conscious capitalism movement forward. So anything else that you haven't mentioned already that you kind of want to mention or even to emphasize?
I would say one of the best things you can do to stay up to date, if you really want to know kind of how can I continue to take action and how can I gain more access to these stories? Because really what we know is business leaders are inspired by other business leaders and people in their community who have taken action, who have gone before them. So definitely take a look at the mailing list. Join our mailing list so that you can stay up to date with those stories. We're really trying to provide practical examples, tools, best practices, resources for business leaders to take the next step, even if it's the very first step. They've never really done this before, they're brand new. But it's a beautiful journey, and we welcome everyone who's, no matter how far along you are in that space. So take a look at that. And also, I would just encourage everyone here to really own and prioritize your own well-being because we can only we can only give as much as we have to give, and if we aren't taking care of ourselves, body, mind, and soul, then I know there's some real limitations with being able to be the best person for our families, our friends, and our communities. So if you want inspiration about kind of how to be your best self, follow along. I share best practices and tips and tricks with emilypricewellness.com and Emily Price Wellness on Instagram. So if that interests you, I'd love to kind of connect with you in those spaces as well. I think personal self-care and just owning our own well-being journey is so fundamental to creating a thriving world together. That's what I'd add.
What was that line, Emily? That was cool. It was we can only give as much as we have. Was
We
that
have
it?
to give. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I've seen so many times, especially in the business communities, that business leaders can do an amazing job giving, but if they aren't able to pause, reset, receive, then they can burn out really quickly. And that's been a struggle. And that's something that, we want to work to avoid and create long lasting, sustainable organizations and systems that are really built on this idea of being able to tend to listen to and care for ourselves well so that we can do that for other people. That's really important.
Love it, Emily Price. Thank you for sharing your wellness background, how wellness ties to conscious capitalism, what conscious capitalism is all about, the four tenets, and then sharing how individuals can take action and learn about the different chapters and how to stay up to date with resources and events from conscious capitalism. So thanks again for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nathan. And thanks for the work that you're doing in this space as well. So appreciate it.